Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Out of Touch. I am Kai Schwemmer, your chipper, jovial, and frankly, concerned host. We have a tremendous show with so much breaking news to get into right now, today, tonight. Evolving situations, mentions of insurrection, the employing, perhaps, of the Insurrection Act to quell what is a riot being orchestrated by terrorists, some are saying, on American soil. Maybe this is all a little bit rhetorically charged, but we're going to get into every single bit of it. We're living through a historical moment, a true catalyst, a pivotal point in our history, and you guys get to hear it all from me. You get to hear what you ought to believe. That's fantastic. That's a great arrangement. We're going to be talking, obviously, about what happened today in Minneapolis. I am so vindicated about what I said a couple weeks ago, where we just need to get rid of Minneapolis. Can we just cut them off, throw them into the sea, give them to Canada? I don't care what we do. I'm not even going to say, I was going to say rhetorically nuke them, but you know, best not even to make jokes about that. But we got to do something. Oh, hold on. Am I blurry a little bit? No, we're good. We're good. We're focused up. But yeah, hold on. I think we are blurry a little bit. Got to make sure the camera focuses in. Hey-yo. Hey-yo. Is it fine? Is it fine for you guys? Okay, I think we're fine. Anyway, we'll be going over all of that. It's going to be exciting. The stuff happening there is crazy. And what is really interesting, just, to tackle everything from 1,000 feet above, it's really, really worrying the way that an individual can be radicalized. We'll talk a little bit about, I believe his name's Alex Pretty. Alex Pretty? See if I'm not mistaken there. Yeah, Alex Pretty. This is a guy who was a nurse. He was male nurse, by the way. But this is an individual who, by all accounts, seems normal. Admittedly, liberal physiognomy. You look at the photo of him, and this is kind of like the average person who goes completely crazy based off of the infographics that they've been exposed to on Instagram. But there is something very worrisome about the fact that these normal kind of milquetoast white Americans are radicalized to the point of going to the street with guns to stop law enforcement from executing the law. And there's a lot that can be said about means, methods, training, and all of that, don't get me wrong, has some relevance. But none of it would be necessary if we lived in a country that still believed in law and order. None of it would be necessary if we lived in a country where we were able to, actually enact the policies that were campaigned on by the current president of the United States that passed by popular mandate. If we were able to enact these laws, if we were able to deport all of the criminals in jails, which we're unable to do for some reason, state governments are so concerned with protecting illegal criminal immigrants and aliens that are literally in their jail system, that are literally in prisons, in order to hinder the United States from carrying out something that was campaigned on by the president and upon which he won. If we didn't have to deal with any of that, we wouldn't be in the situation where we are now. But it is worrisome that an individual can be so provoked to undermine the most basic tenet of any democracy, republic, or any kind of stable, functional government, which is law and order, justice. This is literally one of the two great eternal laws. What are the two great eternal laws? The law of mercy and the law of justice. And you literally can't have a nation, you cannot have a country, if you're unable to actually do anything about policing the latter. If there is no justice, you have no nation, or you will not have it for long. But we're going to be getting into all of that, into some of the crazy things that happened, because not only, by the way, was Alex Pretty shot and killed by ICE officers today in a scuffle that is very difficult, by the way, to understand the nuances of. The video is really difficult to parse, the truth out of. And the reason for this, frankly, is because there were like 6 guys beating up on this one dude. And I'll admit, like from the onset, optically, this really sucks. And we're going to get into the optics of this because the optics do matter a lot. Do they change a lot of the facts on the ground? No. Same thing with Renee Good, right? You have this totally milquetoast, liberal, 30-something-year-old woman, 40-something-year-old woman. And the optics of her death are terrible. They reflect terribly on the Trump admin, terribly on ICE. But they don't change, by the way, any of the underlying facts, which is that Renee Good was radicalized to impede police officers because she was being told by liberal media, liberal governors, liberal mayors, that it was her civic duty to impede the role of police officers or the ability of police officers to fulfill their duty. And it appears we've been told this is a similar situation with Alex Pretty. Now, I will admittedly be a little bit hesitant when addressing his case because I think more is going to come out. And the fact that more is coming out, by the way, and the fact that the right wing is asking for more to come out should go to show that we are, by the way, not the party. We are not the ideology which asks for complete trust in all circumstances. We are waiting for more evidence to come out, just like everybody else, because we know in the majority of cases, it actually tends to justify our preconceived, understanding of what occurred. How many times have you waited for police body cam footage and when it's released, you end up realizing that you were right all along? So let's be clear. None of us here, nobody in the chat, I imagine, and myself included, none of us are against more footage coming out. But don't get it twisted. This isn't about journalism. A lot of people are saying, the reason that these innocent people, these Minnesotans are out on the streets is in order to, hold ICE accountable. It's not about accountability. It's not about that at all. It is about obstruction. If it was about accountability, if it was about journalism, if it was about being, this noble warrior fighting for the truth to report on what is happening on the ground, James O'Keefe wouldn't be getting death threats. Cam Higbee wouldn't be stalked and assaulted doing his job as a journalist. And look, whatever you say about Cam Higbee, whatever you may think, and he and I have debated, whatever you may think of James O'Keefe, because I myself have said some things, when they go into these places, they actually, to their credit, are not the ones out there yelling expletives. They're getting footage. Unfortunately, in the last year, all of the footage has basically been when other people are attempting to kill them. And that's a problem. But we'll get into that. We'll not only get into the death, the shooting of Alex Pretty, but we'll also get into the attacks on the ICE officers, the facts that we do know. We'll discuss the Insurrection Act, which is once again being mentioned, and which I would posit is not technically necessary, but I believe optically will become so. We'll discuss all of that. You'll want to hear me out. You'll want to hear what I have to describe, discuss, and frame, because it is a very contentious subject. I understand that. I have left-wing friends who have been asking me about this, and I have right-wing friends who have been messaging me saying, doesn't this thing look awful? I'm here to talk to every single one of those people. And also to the more right-wing, our more, America First, nationalist, truly conservative audience, absolutely will be discussing the importance of, like I said before, the Insurrection Act. So everybody is going to want to stick around for the show today. Please share the stream on Instagram, on Twitter, wherever you can share it. Share it with your dog. Print out a photo. Make a screen cap of the stream. Print it out. Slide it under your neighbor's door. Do whatever you can. But beyond that, if you'd like to show your support for the show, please subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Rumble. Additionally, if you'd like to pitch in, support monetarily, which goes to the building of a studio, improving the production of the show. Once again, in this beautiful studio, big shout out to Off the Record. Amazing production, amazing production. And we've got, we changed up the lighting. We're having our dark Brandon moment. We're having our dark Brandon moment. We are missing the American flags. We're missing the Capitol behind us. We were actually up at the Capitol this morning at a pro-life march, but we've got the red lights. Usually these are orange. They're supposed to reflect the vibe of the show. Tonight, the vibe of the show is red because blood is pouring out in the streets. But big shout out to Off the Record. And if you'd like to support the improvement of the production on the show, if you would like to continue pitching in, helping me, a poor college student, feel free to go to powerchat.live/Kai Clips. At the halfway point of the show, we'll be diving into some of the super chats that you guys have sent in. I already see a couple here that I'm excited to get into and respond to. And we're doing them, by the way, at the middle point of the show so that by the end of the show, if there's something somebody would like to elaborate on, they've got the opportunity. This allows me as well to maybe, if I have to make adjustments, if things break, if somebody mentions something to me, I'm able to address it in real time halfway through the show. And additionally, if you would like access to a larger archive of my content from my old YouTube channel, which was deleted, unfortunately, the day I left on my mission, God was giving me a chance to, clean my slate, wash my hands. If you would like access to all of that, go to the link in the bio of my YouTube channel or Instagram. There's a link tree there. You can go subscribe to my Gumroad. There on that Gumroad for $5 a month, you're going to get access to all that content and early access as well to YouTube videos that I'll be uploading in the future. We've got very exciting stuff coming. An interview with a professional bodybuilder, Andrew Uz, running for, I believe, the 35th congressional district in the state of Utah. This guy went a little viral on Instagram and TikTok a couple weeks back because he basically, his ad campaign was, can your senator bench 225 or is he low energy and retarded? And he didn't say that. I shouldn't put words in his mouth. But then he, repped out 225 like an absolute animal, like an absolute lord. So anyway, we'll be interviewing him on Tuesday. That interview hopefully will be out sometime early next week, and it'll be up first on the Gumroad. Additionally, if all goes well tonight, those Gumroad users already subscribed, and if you subscribe now, you'll get access to it too. We will upload the speech that I gave today at Utah's March for Life. It was a beautiful event. We love babies. We love mamas, baby mamas even, in fact. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. We are making it out of the hood. And by we, I mean babies. And by the hood, I mean the womb. We're fighting for babies. I did a bit on my show years back when Roe v. Wade actually first got overturned. We need to employ new rhetoric in the fight for, life. We need to start taking the language. The left says, we're not pro-life, we're pro-birth. And, to be fair, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point, right? Like, we want people to be born, yeah. And, I've never met anybody alive now who hasn't also been born. So, this is like an important part, right? Not to say that obviously like a fetus is alive, but the birthing is kind of like, this is what we want. So I don't even get what they're trying to say there. But then the other thing is we need to shape the rhetoric to be even more in favor of what we're talking about. And so I propose that we just start, something's cool. Dude, that's so pregnant. Frankly, I think this is the next step rhetorically for the pro-life movement. Like, oh, dude, oh, you're going to have a kid soon? That's so freaking pregnant, bro. Oh my gosh, dude. I was about to say, let's get pregnant. This is maybe not the way that you should use that new phrase. But I think it's a good one. I think it'll stick. Hey, dude, that's so freaking pregnant. That's so freaking pregnant. Boom. Pro-natalist rhetoric, slang. This is the way we win the culture war on this issue. But that video of my speech is going to be uploaded hopefully either tonight or tomorrow. And I really hope you guys enjoy. The pro-life cause is obviously a very important one. So yes, subscribe to the Gumroad. And I believe, let me see. I think there was something else that I had to mention. Let me double check. I usually go mostly off of notes, but or away from my notes, but did want to make sure I got to everything today because there's just so much to cover. Okay, boom. Yeah, that's good. That's for our intro. And in order to start the show off today, I want to do a little summary of how we got here, right? News moves so fast. The news moves so fast. Headlines change every single day. Every week, a new person dies in Minneapolis. And you're never going to be able to remember their names if you don't spend some time remembering, reflecting, going back. You know, we were talking, the gentleman and I, the producers and I, before the show, and we were like, okay, well, so what was this case of, we were describing kind of the issue of lawfare. What was the case of the black gentleman who was jogging and blah, 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 blah? And legendary poll from one of the producers, Jacob Blake. You know, and everybody remembers George Floyd, but fewer remember Jacob Blake, and even fewer remember Darrell Brooks, who drove a truck through a crowd of the elderly, of children as well, in Waukesha, if I'm not mistaken, was the city. And few remember his name, despite the fact that he had openly anti-white tweets on his social media, despite the fact that he was a felon, he was just out on parole. Despite all of these details, we so often forget. And the left is very good at remembering. The left is actually very good at remembering the slights against them, and they use it to their advantage. The right must do the same. So in order to start, let's go over how we got here. In 2016, Trump begins his campaign in a truly revolutionary fashion and begins to challenge preconceived notions that we had had and that the Republican Party had had about how immigration ought to be done, and especially how illegal immigration ought to be responded to. And if we are even to go further back in time, it's important to contextualize. ICE only exists post-2000s. ICE is created by President Bush in 2003 and is not something that has existed forever. Not, by the way, for lack of necessity or because of a lack of necessity, but rather because historically we had never had the influx of immigrants that we had post-1965 Hart-Celler, which is why you have presidents like Ronald Reagan, who conservative, despite being conservative in many regards, offer amnesty to thousands, millions, in fact, of immigrants, hoping that this would somehow eliminate any future need or push from either party for more migration. Well, where did that get us? Not very far. The amnesty is actually one of the worst things Reagan did during his presidency. Other people often, cite as well gun control. And I think that's maybe more of a nuanced take, because when you think about it, taking guns out of, inner cities is not necessarily, the worst thing in the world. But this obviously is one of the worst parts of Reagan's presidency. And if you look back at when the Hart-Celler Act was passed, which significantly and forever changed the way that the United States does its immigration, it changed our policy from then on. Nobody, in fact, even the president who passed it and his Congress, nobody expected this to cause a major change or shift in the demographic core of the migrants, or in the number of them, or in any number of variables. And it's because we had it too easy. We had had such restrictive immigration for such a long period of the United States' history, and admittedly, it was also different in character. When you look at the 14th Amendment debates, people expected that the Chinese that immigrated over here, that their total population in the United States would stay relatively the same. Senators debating the issue literally said that their bones would either, even if their bones didn't make it back to China during their lives, they wouldn't be buried in the United States. Their bones would be flown back to China. Like, there was even a perception that after somebody was dead, their body would be taken back to their home country. So the Republican Party simply just didn't know how bad mass migration was going to be. And that's why a lot of the border enforcement that we see, the border wall, the border fencing, the deportations as an idea, ICE itself as a part of our law enforcement, all of this seems relatively new. But I want to state again, it's not for lack of necessity. It's rather because the Republican Party has not been proactive. So here comes Trump in 2016, and now we have somebody talking about deportations in a way that is radically different. He takes a radically different approach to deportations, to immigration. He wins, and in his first 4 years is stalled and impeded and hardly able to do anything in order to improve border enforcement. And in fact, funding for Border Patrol, funding for ICE and law enforcement actually improves in the Biden admin thereafter. And only now, in Trump's second term, has skyrocketed because the big, beautiful bill was passed with massive funding being added to DHS, to ICE, and to border security and border patrol in general. So this is kind of the context. It is important to recall, this was a shock to me when I got back from my mission. Also, somebody's saying that the quality of the video looks very low quality. I think that's on your end, I think. That's on your end. Restart your computer. Hey, you got to hop off the Android, man. I'm sorry. But anyway, you have to recall, in 2020 and in 2024, Trump continues his rhetoric and has even honed it. He has even sharpened it. He is talking, to my surprise, when I returned from my mission, during his campaign about the largest deportation effort that the nation has seen ever. And Republicans make a kind of stupid retort here. They say, well, actually, instead of Trump, it was actually Obama that had the most deportations. And while technically true, it's an obfuscation of the fact that these are different deportations. They are at the border deportations. They are like, you show up and you're gone. What Trump is campaigning for and campaigning on are interior deportations, which are far more difficult to actually carry out and are far more controversial because they include going into communities potentially. Preferably, a large majority of them, and in fact, 48% of the deportations carried out, come from prisons. They come from jails, where illegal immigrants are already being held because they've committed crimes, and then they're being sent back to their home countries. But some states will not even allow the federal government to do that. And by the way, just as an aside, that comment that Republicans make is so stupid, because even if this were totally true, that Obama had more deportations than Trump, wouldn't that make Obama super freaking cool and Trump like a total loser for not even being able to deport anybody as a Republican? That's just an aside. But nonetheless, he campaigns on mass deportations. He campaigns on immigration restriction, on tariffs. He gets into office, and when an effort is made to begin implementing these policies, to truly begin deporting people, he is met with immediate backlash. Immediately, people do not like the look of masked individuals or cars rolling around, taking people, detaining them, however legal it may be. They don't like the look. And right now, the true conflict is if Trump has the political strength and will to continue. We are in a game of chicken between the people of Minneapolis, between the liberals of the United States and America, and a president who got a mandate of the people. And so Trump, trying his best at the beginning of his time elected, obviously as well with the help of Stephen Miller, who I think is a very intelligent guy, but at times will advocate for things that are not in Americans' best interest. For instance, an expedited visa process for H-2A visas, agricultural visas. What's up with that? Isn't that like the opposite of what we want? More low-wage, low-skill immigrant laborers in agriculture? So there's, more to get into there. But Trump goes and they begin publishing, DHS begins publishing deportation numbers. Only a couple weeks later, they stop. Deportations are not what everybody had hoped they would be. And as the deportations occur, it seems the cost-benefit analysis begins to trail off. We incur much greater a cost for far smaller a benefit. We are sending dozens, hundreds even, of ICE agents to different cities around the country, but at every point they are stalled. And if they do make arrests, maybe it's one or two people and it looks like total overkill. It doesn't look like things are being done efficiently. But an effort is made by the Trump admin to do something about deportations, because this is a major point of the campaign. And that needs to be recited more frequently. This is a major part of his campaign. I wish Trump could hear this constantly, that deportations is something he campaigned on and he has a mandate. And the people might turn around and say, well, look, in actuality, when we see how it happens, we don't like it. Well, hold on. You voted for it already. I understand maybe it's not pretty, but you don't get to withdraw just as soon as you realize that it's not as pretty as you thought. In fact, it would be worse to withdraw. And so what happens? One of the next critical plot points in our story of deportations and the way that the Trump admin has handled immigration is in LA. And what happens in LA? You have some comments being made about, okay, there's a lot less traffic, which are probably reasonably true. Even if it's not because of deportations, a lot of people are scared to get out. Okay, great, awesome. There is a kind of chilling effect, some kind of fear that is being promoted, and it's the kind of fear that a criminal should feel when he's broken the law and knows that the police are coming to knock on doors in his neighborhood. I think it's a very reasonable, very legitimate fear. But what is actually the result of the LA dispatchment, or is that even a word? The dispatching of ICE agents to LA. What's the result? Rocks are thrown at them. The Mexican flag waves more in that city than it has waved in years. There are motorcyclists driving around, cop cars on fire. The police cornered, ICE agents cornered, assaulted, beaten, projectiles, rocks thrown at them. And what happens? What do we get? No significant increase in the number of deportations. And all the while, by the way, Trump, and this will become relevant later, Trump is practicing a side project, which is the dispatching of the National Guard and of law enforcement, federal law enforcement, to cities that are crime-ridden, particularly those governed by Democrats. He's trying this on the side, unrelated to the deportation efforts. This is going to come in handy a little bit later when we talk about the Insurrection Act. But now, what are our most recent developments? The most recent developments with ICE come in the wake of a huge conversation about Somali fraud. Now, let's be clear about the issue of the Somalis in Minnesota. They've been there for a while. A majority of them are refugees. Many of them, well, and look, they may have lied about their refugee status. That's totally legit. It's also a war-torn country. Couldn't have even been that far-fetched of a lie. However they got there, they are not the kind of illegal immigrants that most people have in mind when we talk about deportations. So immediately, or from the offset, there's kind of this question about, well, look, we understand a lot of fraud is being committed, but it's probably fraud being committed by people who legally live there, who have either refugee status and can't be sent back to their home country because they're refugees, and their country, Somalia, is not getting any better anytime soon. I don't think it might ever get better. And Trump knows that too. And it's also being committed by, some Minneapolis residents. There was a white woman who, in cohort with, I think, 45 Somalian migrants, was responsible for one of the largest acts of fraud in recent history, stealing, I think, $250 million from the federal government through a scam and fraudulent kind of food for kids type setup or organization. Basically, during the pandemic, the government is giving money to these restaurants that are providing food for children. They start claiming that they're providing food for thousands of children, and in fact, in some cities, for more children than the city has residents. Very clear fraud, tons of Somalis implicated. A majority of the fraud being committed in Minnesota is by the Somali community. This is true, statistically true. But still, not terribly relevant to the issue of deportations. Maybe in the sense that if they're committing these crimes, if they're found guilty, then you can deport them. But an investigation of fraud is different than an investigation of the way that they came here to the United States to begin with, because the majority of refugees from Somalia did not cross the southern border. Anyway, in the aftermath of Nick Shirley's investigative report concerning fraud occurring in Minnesota, and that's a whole different discussion that we won't litigate, the fact of the matter is it caused a great stir. In the aftermath of his investigative reporting, there is an effort made by the president to go in to send law enforcement, ICE, and there is even a state-level investigation into the fraud occurring. Jacob Frey, by the way, and Tim Walz have also been subpoenaed on different issues, but related as well to the fraud that has occurred. And so this is why these ICE agents go out to Minnesota. And I'll add, this is an ugly place. It is cold. It is barren. It is in the negative degrees. There's wind. It is harsh. And it's not just whistles that you hear of the wind, but rather these harsh, shrieking whistles of all of these liberal boomers and millennials who are trying to alert everybody to the presence of ICE in their communities. This is a big problem. Just from a human angle, if you put somebody in a situation where they are physically uncomfortable, where they are physically in pain because of how cold it is, nobody's in high spirits. Not the protesters, not the police, not ICE. But this is the framing, this is the context for the standoff that occurs. In an effort by some ICE agents to detain or search for or arrest illegal immigrants, a woman, a Minnesota resident, Renee Good, uses her car in some way to impede officers, and then, as she is told by one ICE officer to step out of her vehicle to leave, she is shouted at as well by her wife, who says, "Drive, drive, drive," and puts at risk the life of one of these ICE agents, who in turn draws his weapon, feeling some kind of credible threat for his life or serious bodily injury, fires 3 bullets and kills her. Renee Good, a woman who has a child, is married, yes, to a woman, so maybe it's not as a sympathetic a cause for Republican voters, but certainly for the left, and seems very normal. And in fact, in the video, is seen interacting to some degree cordially before she, was about to hit the guy with her car, seen to have a cordial correspondence with the police officers, saying, "I don't hate you," and all of the rest. She becomes the first martyr in this new battle for Minneapolis. This event causes a massive outpouring, first of support from the state government, from Tim Walz, from Jacob Frey. It causes Jacob Frey to yell expletives like a child during his press conference about the president, about ICE. And what are the calls being made by these state and city officials? Get ICE out of our state. It is an active call for the laws of the nation, 8 U.S. Code 1325 and 1312, if I'm not mistaken. It is an active effort to stop and resist the enforcement of those laws. And that's crucial. We'll get into that again with the Insurrection Act. So, we have our first martyr in Minneapolis, and a very sympathetic one to the left. This drives some people out as well to not just impede officers, which is a crime, by the way. If anybody needs to know this, and I've said this before, you don't need to take my word for it. You can listen to the progressive sweetheart, Zohran Mamdani, who has put out videos on his social media on Twitter saying, "Hey, this is what you do if you come in contact with ICE. These are your rights." Enumerated among them are not the ability to impede, resist, or in any other way obstruct the acts of law enforcement. He said that, not me. You can listen to him. Listen to him all you want, please. He might keep you from dying. But nonetheless, that is exactly what the people in Minneapolis do. They follow around the law enforcement officers with whistles. These terrible, and it's like you listen to any video, it's the most obnoxious noise in the world, these whistles. But you've got these whistles, and on top of that, active efforts either by vehicle or by blockade, by the creation of autonomous zones, active efforts being made to impede the ability for law enforcement, ICE, to do its job. And this is where our second martyr, Alex Pretty, enters the scene. Alex Pretty is out, seen in photos, confronting, arguing with law enforcement officers. It was said by law enforcement officials that he was attempting to stop ICE agents who were attempting to make an arrest of an illegal immigrant or somebody they suspected to unlawfully be in the United States of America. This is the context of him. But there's something else to add. Alex Pretty is not just a bystander. Alex Pretty is there intentionally protesting, resisting, and he's armed. And he is armed likely because you have people like Don Lemon who have actively called for the left wing to arm itself in order to resist what they see here as an oppressive government. They simply do not believe that these laws can in any way be enforced. They don't believe it. They've gone past the idea of reforming the immigration system. They now believe that in these states, the law will not be enforced if it is concerning immigration. Somebody's legal status in the country, whatever felony that may carry, if they have a failure to inform the United States of a change in residency or the fact that they are being harbored as an illegal immigrant, despite the fact that that is a felony, these states, Minnesota primarily, have all said, we simply will not enforce these laws and we will not tolerate the U.S. government sending law enforcement to enforce these laws. They've resisted it outright. And what, by the way, does that show to somebody like Alex Pretty? What does that show to these protesters? It shows that it is a conflict where the line is drawn, the dividing line is drawn between the federal government and the states. And this is perpetuated when mayors like Jacob Frey say that it may be necessary for the local police to arrest ICE agents. That is insane. You want to talk to me about the Insurrection Act being used on American cities? Yeah, well, how about using your police departments to arrest federal law enforcement officers? That is the state equivalent of an Insurrection Act in the reverse. This has led to chaos in the streets of Minneapolis and led today to the death of Alex Pretty. Alex Pretty was not just, like I said, protesting, but came with a loaded weapon with 2 magazines, a Sig Sauer with a threaded barrel and an optic, perhaps an extended mag, and 2 additional magazines. This is how he showed up to protest. This is, by the way that Don Lemon, the way that plenty of people would want him to show up. Now, don't get me wrong. There are Republicans who are talking about this issue in a way that almost makes them seem like hypocrites, in a way that actually says that the Second Amendment maybe is not as important as we had originally thought. Many of them are making the arguments that the left makes. Here's the difference. The moment you resist arrest, resist detention, obstruct an officer from doing his job, you forfeit your right to draw your weapon in self-defense. And you don't draw your weapon in self-defense on a police officer trying to do his job to begin with. The question here is not one of whether, Alex Pretty was legally or illegally in possession of a firearm. The question is that he is there illegally resisting arrest and acting in some way to stoke the flames of the conflict. And the same people who were speaking out so loud, by the way, about Kyle Rittenhouse are advocating the exact same thing happen. Kyle Rittenhouse himself has admitted, hey, look, it was stupid of me to go out and defend this property. It was not my obligation. It was not my right or responsibility. It put me in a position where my life was threatened, and unfortunately, I had to use force to defend it. But let's be clear. Kyle Rittenhouse is not Alex Pretty. Kyle Rittenhouse defended himself from a domestic abuser, a pedophile. Kyle Rittenhouse was threatened first. Kyle Rittenhouse was chased, attempted to de-escalate by running from not a law enforcement individual, not an LEO or an ELO. No, LEO, law enforcement officer. He was not instigating in any way this conflict. And I got in trouble one time for quoting him and saying the full word, but that's an aside. Kyle Rittenhouse is not Alex Pretty. Kyle Rittenhouse was not fighting with police. And Kyle Rittenhouse did make an attempt to de-escalate, and yet And still, Kyle Rittenhouse has apologized. He said, I shouldn't have been there. Hindsight is 20/20, but I will not apologize for defending myself. I'll apologize maybe and say that I shouldn't have been there, but I won't ever apologize for using my right to self-defense to save my life, which it did. He would have likely been dead had he not. Alex Priddy is not the same case. Alex Priddy is there not to defend property, but literally to stop in some way, or at least discourage law enforcement officers from doing their job. That is the key difference every single part of this conversation, no matter what angle you choose to take. And in fact, no matter what ICE does, the thing that matters first and foremost, is that it is a conversation of either enforcing our laws or not. It is a conversation concerning whether we are a country of law and order or whether we are a country governed by anarchists, radical progressives, and violent activists. That is the conversation. If there are not calls and efforts being made in Minnesota to impede ICE officers, to impede the enforcement of laws that we have had on the books for decades, Alex Priddy is not there. Renee Good is not there. If there are not active efforts being made to harbor, because that is what it becomes. What do you think it is? If your state becomes a sanctuary city, what do you think that is other than harboring illegal immigrants, which is a crime, that is a felony? If that felony is not being committed, and if that felony is not being defended by the governor of the state of Minnesota and by the mayor of Minneapolis, nobody dies. But now, we not only have Renee Good as a martyr for this movement, which only then emboldens the people who are attempting to say that the law will not be enforced in our state, but now you also have Alex Priddy, a nurse, a 37-year-old Minnesota resident, not a physically imposing man, not a man who looks scary or intimidating, a man who seemed to have been an active member of his community in some regard. At least this is the way that he is being portrayed, and a man whose death will now galvanize thousands of people to take to the streets and arm themselves. And I think no matter what your political opinion is, no matter where you stand in this conflict, nobody wants to see mass death. A mass casualty event is the last thing we want. But a mass casualty event becomes all the more likely the more firearms are introduced to the conflict. And here's the issue. The way this issue has been framed by the left is as if it's these two opposing political ideologies in conflict. But that's not the case. These are law enforcement officers and vigilantes. It is not a battlefield or a marketplace of ideas. These are anarchists, and this is the arm of justice. Is ICE at times overzealous? Yes. Were cops perhaps excessive in their use of force? Yes. Would either of us, or in either case, would we ever call for a cessation of the enforcement of our laws? Are you going to stop arresting people for rape because a cop was overzealous or excessive? Because he used a tactic that was not trained? Because he employed a tactic that was maybe more brutish? We would never, ever advocate for a cessation of law enforcement on the grounds that one individual or even a handful of individuals were excessive in their administration of it. Because we understand intuitively that when you stop the police from doing their jobs, your country falls into anarchy. That is what we understand intuitively. And you see these videos now of anarchists on Twitter saying, this is exactly what I knew was going to happen. This is why you have to be armed. What are you implying? So that you can shoot the cops before they shoot you? That is what's being implied. And let me tell you, if we get into a standoff, if this situation continues the way it's going, where ICE is being threatened, and by being threatened then feels that they need to use more force as a precaution because they don't know who's out to kill them. They don't know if a woman is going to run over them with their car or if she's just trying to get away, because all they've been hearing are credible threats to their life and safety. All they know is that when James O'Keefe arrives in the state of Minnesota, he and his entire team are threatened. Their address is sent to them, and they are made and given the ultimatum that if they don't evacuate the state promptly, they'll be killed. That's what they know. That's what ICE knows. And then if you have on the other side of ICE a bunch of protesters who think that they can take the law in their hands, who think that the Second Amendment was actually written so that they could stop law enforcement, which is a ridiculous thought in and of itself. Yeah, let's imagine the founding fathers there. Okay, guys, so which amendments are we going to write into the U.S. Constitution? Which amendments are going to be really important for the founding of the country? Yeah, so I'm thinking this right to bear arms, this ability to stand up to a tyrannical government. Okay, well, how is the government going to be tyrannical? Are they going to support lawlessness? Are they going to, just go around killing people at random? What's the government going to do? Are they going to start mass surveilling? Or what are they going to do? Are they going to draft all of us into like a conflict? All of those would be more legitimate reasons. But no. What's the real reason they came up with there during the Constitutional Convention? What's the real idea they came up with? What is the real basis for the Second Amendment? Oh, we've got it. If the government ever tries to dispatch law enforcement to enforce laws that are literally a part of U.S. code, that are felonies, if they ever try to do that, let's say if somebody immigrates here illegally and they, take money from the government in the forms of welfare, if the government ever tries to actually kick those people out, if the government ever tries to send them back to their home countries, even if it's like in a totally legitimate way, even if it's in the most humane way possible, I think that's why we need to write in the Second Amendment, is just in case that happens so that we can kill them, so that we can take up guns and discourage them from being in our state. Which is the exact same thing, by the way, that happened with Black Lives Matter. You had these cases, many of which, by the way, were not at all what the media made them out to be, but you had cases where the police appeared overzealous. You had narratives which were being parroted by mainstream media and pundits, such as, hands up, don't shoot, which are total lies, fabrications, that inspire then these progressive activists to go to the streets and say, we don't want police at all. And what happens in the absence of the police? What happens? Oh, $2 billion in property damage, the death of David Dorn, massive destruction of property, of cities, centers of life, huge decline in social capital and social trust. That's what happens when the police retreat. What do you think happens when the police retreat? I'll tell you what happens. It's already happened in many places in the country. You get cities like Chicago, where you have the O Block, where you have different gang-run cities or precincts, neighborhoods, and the police don't enter. The police literally will not even enter some of these neighborhoods because they know that it is gang-controlled and that if they show up, they'll be killed. That's what Minnesota wants to become. It's not bad enough already. They have to make it worse. And that's the conflict we're engaged in. It's not an ideological conflict of right versus wrong or of left versus right or Republican, Democrat. That's not what it is. It is law enforcement, blind law enforcement versus tyranny and mob rule. That is what it is. And so whatever the circumstances of the shooting of Alex Pretty, and there are things that I don't like about it, like the cop pistol whipping him, it's like, I don't know if that was trained. Did there have to be 6 guys? Probably not. But nonetheless, whatever those questions may be, none of it would ever be a justification for withdrawing from the state and not enforcing our laws. And the fact that that's the paradigm now, that if a cop does something bad, the police need to be defunded. Or if an ICE agent does something bad, then we actually can't enforce our immigration law. And Trump, you need to stop doing this because it's just so mean. The fact that that is our paradigm is a joke. That's laughable. That's ridiculous. And the worst thing that Trump has done to respond to this is backed off. Hey, last time I checked, Mr. President, we don't negotiate with terrorists, okay? Last time I checked, if there are a bunch of people holding an entire state hostage and they complain because you are trying to blindly enforce the laws, and I don't mean blind in a sense of like just, doing whatever all the time and, firing at the hip without aiming. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who the person is. We are applying our immigration laws the way they were written. Okay? And so if you're in this situation where you have militias, terrorist organizations, because Antifa has been deemed a terrorist organization officially. When you have terrorist organizations attempting to scare or dissuade the police, law enforcement from doing their jobs, the worst thing you could do is legitimize them by backing off. It's like with Charlie Kirk. What's the worst thing that we could do? Stop doing campus events. Because what does it say? It tells the shooter that what he did works. And if Trump backs off from the Insurrection Act, if he withdraws or withholds those ICE agents from doing their jobs in Minnesota, he legitimizes the protests of all of these people who are actively committing felonies by harboring illegal aliens. That's a problem. You want to know what our quick path is to more violence in this country? It is legitimizing this form of protest. And don't get me wrong, I do believe in the First Amendment. I do believe in a right to assemble. I believe in your ability to, petition for, a redress of grievances, right? I absolutely believe that. I believe you can petition your government. If you've been, totally slighted, harmed, wronged in some way by the federal government, absolutely. If a police officer, if an ICE agent has been excessive in his use of force, if he has done something that is wrong, absolutely sue him, investigate it, get $1 million payout. I don't care. But none of that will ever allow you to just say that we're not going to have law enforcement in our state. That is off the table. And if Trump cedes any amount of ground, if Trump, even hearing how unpopular these protests have become, which is largely because the media is manipulating these situations, telling stories that are fake. You see this story about a 5-year-old being arrested by ICE? Yeah, not true. His dad fled. His dad abandoned his child, and the ICE agents had to take the child because he was alone. They weren't arresting a 5-year-old. The media is perpetrating this. The media is stirring people up to anger. And to some degree, by the way, the right does it as well. To some degree, the right, when it starts saying stuff without any amount of, certifiable information with regard to the circumstances of the death of Renee Good or the death of Alex Priddy, it also does that. They also stoke the flames. And I don't think that's good either. But you don't have to engage with it in that way. You simply have to apply the laws. And if Trump, again, cedes any amount of ground, he will be legitimizing violent protest. And it will lead to more violence. And so in conclusion to this first part, and then we'll get into the Insurrection Act after we read a couple super chats. In conclusion, if you want a recipe for more mass violence, what do? You tell a bunch of these liberals who already feel that they can get away with breaking the law, you tell them to go out and to bring guns. And then you know what happens? What happens is you have one shot ring out. You have one officer discharge his weapon, or maybe even a protester discharging his weapon accidentally. And immediately, the guns are raised and the bullets start flying. And you get a Boston massacre, or you get this mass casualty event, and you get it on accident or by accident. And you know who will be culpable? You know who will be at fault? It will be the media. It will be Don Lemon. It will be Jacob Frey. It will be Tim Walz. To some extent, it will even be those of the right. But at the end of the day, it is not a conflict of ideologies. It is a conflict of law and order and tyranny of the mob and total anarchy. That's our conflict. So this is a little bit of what we're getting into. And the Insurrection Act, I'm very excited. I do need a little cooler. I need a reset before we get into the Insurrection Act, because this is the big news. This is what's being mentioned right now by Trump. But I got to grab some water, and we'll go over the super chats in the interim. If you guys want to send in a super chat, feel free, motivated to do so now. Voice your concerns. Voice your concerns. Oh, voice crack. That was crazy. That just shows I need water. Voice your concerns. Tell me what you think. Support the show at powerchat.live/KaiClips. I've sent it there in the chat. And then momentarily, we'll get into the super chats. Can I grab a glass of water? Is there any chance? I'm like the goat of all time over here. We need a mug, a glass. Dude, the production squad goes so hard. They hydrate. They hydrate. They hit me up with a cool bevy. Man, the goat, dude, total goat of all time. Anyway, yeah, sorry to be going so hard. Sorry to be going so pensive and concerned. Not to concern troll, but I genuinely think, the way that we see these leftists talking, and there is a significant subsect of them who are armed, and the way they talk about resisting tyranny, there's a really high chance this turns into a mass casualty event. And if you look at some of these autonomous zones, there's not been a clearer example of exactly why the Insurrection Act was written. Maybe not exactly why it was written, but certainly how it could be applied. Perfectly so. Anyway, huge super chat. Diving into our super chats real quick. We have a huge super chat over on Power Chat by Asian Mormon. An $88 super chat. Big yippee. A big W in the chat for Wasian. W for Wasian Mormon. Huge shout out, Asian Mormon. He says, 1,000-year Deseret. Dude, yes. Deseret Imperium, Deseret Kingdom, Christ as the king, 1,000-year reign, Deseret, Millennium Deseret. We were talking about this today. I think Deseret's borders need to be changed a little bit. I say we take the most LDS part of Idaho, and then we take Gilbert first in Arizona, and because that's like the Mormon Mecca outside of Utah. And then, Nevada actually has, Henderson, Nevada has a good subsect. We had some chatters in the chat here from Henderson. Hey, yo, we got anybody from Henderson in the chat? Hey, yo, if you from Henderson, hey, yo, make yourself known in the chat, dog. We finna shout you out. Hey, yo, real Henderson homies. Hey, yo, real Gilbert homies. Hey, yo, if you from Gilbert, Arizona, man. Hey, yo, the hood in Gilbert, Arizona, man. You make yourself known in the chat. We'll call you out. We'll shout you out, big dog. W Asian Mormon. Yeah, 1,000-year Deseret. So imminent, so imminent. I feel like I could finish this entire water in one go. It's like halfway done. No, I live in Australia. Hey, don't worry, Theophilus Bartholomew. We're going to get there. Deseret will expand to Australia at some point. We got to help our boy Ospil. Our boy Ospil is making great edits, but, we got to take Australia. We're going to have to make it Mormon. Hey, Roy, are you seeing the temple? How do they speak in Australia? I can't do an Australian accent. My grandpa lived in Australia for a couple years. So, anyway. And then we had some super chats on YouTube. Thank you, Mr. Sir Volkerstein? Oh, no, Sir Volkerstein. I don't think it's Sir Volkerstein. I think it's Sir Volkerstein. Volkerstein. Let's go. Very German name. Or is it of a different ethnic origin? Sir Volkerstein, thank you very much. He says, my favorite Mormon, God bless you, Kai. Thank you for the $2. We appreciate you. And hey, that's high praise. Your favorite Mormon should probably be the prophet, but I appreciate it nonetheless. $2 from John 11,235. He says, Charlie Kirk would want us to double down. 100%, dude. 100%. Charlie Kirk was kind of, dude, he was kind of metal at the end. He was, and we would get those comments during our campus debates. This guy's like, Charlie Kirk called for public executions. I'm like, he did? When did he do that? This guy sounds based. When did I miss that? Anyway, I disagree with the death penalty. I'm memeing a little bit. Anyway, hard right-wing memer, thank you for the 2. He says, keep up the good work. Thank you. Appreciate you. Appreciate you, hard right-wing memer. I certainly will. We've got an hour already. This is crazy. 4,000 viewers. Gentlemen, it's a big night. Gentlemen, it's a big night. Gentlemen, It's a big night. I understand, by the way, some people are probably asking, why didn't we go over the specifics? Why didn't we go over the specifics of what happened with Alex Preddy? Honestly, it's because the specifics don't matter. At the end of the day, the specifics do not matter. If you are too focused on the specifics, like, okay, worst case scenario, it was totally unjustified. Does that mean that we don't enforce our laws anymore? No, it means you throw all of the ICE agents in jail. And they've done that. You think that a left-wing government, even a right-wing government, would hesitate at all to throw all of those people in jail forever? Absolutely not. Look what they did to Derek Chauvin. You think that they would hesitate in any way to throw all these people in jail? Absolutely not. So that's part of why we didn't get into the specifics. The other part is I'm waiting for more information to come out. I do think we'll probably get better video. I think we'll probably get more information about Alex, about why he was there, what he was doing. What I'm not seeing a lot of is what he was doing before the shooting occurred. I want more info on that. But it's mostly because it doesn't matter. It would change nothing. It wouldn't change the fact that he shouldn't have been there. His parents told him that. Alex's parents told him he should not have been out playing vigilante. He was going to get hurt. And what happened? He died. And Renee Good, it's the exact same deal. These people should not be there. If you want to be there and you want to record people on your phone, be my guest, go ahead. But if you are going to jump to the defense of an individual when they start getting detained by ICE legally and lawfully, then it's probably not going to be the best. Because you are going to be committing a crime, a felony, obstruction of a lawful arrest. And at that point, it is very easy for things to get a lot worse for you. And this is not justifying the death of anybody. I think these deaths are avoidable. I wanted them to have been avoided. It's like God says this in Ezekiel. What is it? Ezekiel 33, I think. He says, I delight in the death of no one. Let me pull this up real quick. Hey, yo, scripture study? Hey, yo, scripture study real check? My opinion, and the opinion I think that every single right-winger should take, it's one of scripture. And what is it? It's in Ezekiel. Let's pull this up. And this is actually one of my favorite verses. It's very profound, actually. Very profound theology, describing as well the nature of God. So let me look up here. I got to go to my gospel library and check my annotations. If you guys don't have the gospel library app, you should get that as soon as possible so that you can study the scriptures better. Here it is. Or Ezekiel 18, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Ezekiel 18. Ezekiel 18, this is base, dude. This is such a base verse. 18:30 to 32. I almost had it. I was getting the verse mixed up. Therefore, I will judge you, O house of Israel, everyone according to his ways, saith the Lord God. Repent and turn yourselves from all transgressions, so iniquity shall not be your ruin. Cast away from you all your transgressions whereby ye have transgressed, and make you a new heart and a new spirit. For why will ye die, O house of Israel? For I have no pleasure in the death of him that dieth, saith the Lord God. Wherefore turn yourselves and live ye. Not to take the holy and push it on to the ugly and contaminated worldly. But I think this last verse is exactly the approach that we should take to these issues. We should have no pleasure in the death of him that dieth. But what is the exhortation of God? Wherefore turn yourselves and live ye. Turn away from these conflicts, which are not motivated in proper ways, which are motivated by resistance to law. Turn away and live. But we should not take pleasure in the death of him that dieth. Earlier, by the way, in this chapter, there's another total banger. Where is this? Oh, man, it's so good. Check this out. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. This is verse 20 to 23. The soul that sinneth, it shall die. The Son shall not bear the iniquity of the Father, neither shall the Father bear the iniquity of the Son. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon him, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon him. But if the wicked will turn from all his sins that he hath committed, and keep all my statutes, and do that which is lawful and right, he shall surely live, he shall not die. All his transgressions that he hath committed, they shall not be mentioned unto him. In his righteousness that he hath done, he shall live. Have I any pleasure at all that the wicked should die, saith the Lord God, and not that he should return from his ways and live? And this is even harder, verse 24. But when the righteous turneth away from his righteousness, and committeth iniquity, and doeth according to all the abominations that the wicked man doeth, shall he live? All his righteousness that he hath done shall not be mentioned. In his trespass that he hath trespassed, and in his sin that he hath sinned, in them shall he die. Very important there. People ask, are sins different? Are there worse sins? Are there better sins? In some sense, all sin is the same in that it all separates us from God. Like it says, when the righteous turneth away from his righteousness and committeth iniquity and doeth according to all the abominations that the wicked man doeth, shall he live? All his righteousness shall not be mentioned. All that righteousness you could say, but I keep all these commandments, so isn't it okay if I sin a little bit on the weekend, though? All your righteousness shall not be counted. But once again, have I any pleasure at all that the wicked should die, saith the Lord God, and not that he should return from his ways and live? That's the take we have to have. That is the take we have to have. We want people to turn from their sin and live. We take no pleasure in their death. Do not delight in the death of anybody. The Lord God does not. Why should we? Anyway, we'll continue reading here. We've got a $5 super chat from Solar, who says, is Trump bringing the guard in a good sign? What do you think Trump's next decisions will realistically be? We're about to get into that. I don't know if he'll declare the Insurrection Act. J.D. Vance has already basically shown hesitancy to it, and I think the hesitancy is warranted because the Insurrection Act shouldn't be needed. We should not need the Insurrection Act. And we'll get into the exact specifics of why. But if the question is him bringing in the National Guard a good sign, or federal law enforcement, federalizing either the National Guard or bringing in the military, if that's the question, I think it might be. Is it a good sign in the sense that things will get better? I don't think so. I think things are going to get worse. But literally, we're at a point where we cannot back down. That is the point we are at. You can't back down. I'm sorry. Lawlessness will not rule this country. We will not permit it. And these leftists, you leftists, if you believe that lawlessness will ever govern this country, I am sorry, because you will incur a great deal of disappointment. So anyway, we'll keep going. Kino's Journey, thank you for the 10. He says, we need a system on a civilizational level like mosaic warfare or aviation safety, stability, resilience, and adaptability. This would help deal with the anarcho-tyranny problems, but first and foremost, enforce our laws. On a civilizational level of like mosaic warfare or aviation safety. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Could you elaborate? Like what part of that you mean? Mosaic warfare or aviation safety? I suppose maybe that's the next part, stability, resilience, and adaptability. I mean, yeah, I think those are good traits no matter what. But I don't understand the aviation safety factor here. But yes, I agree. We should be stable, resilient, and adaptable. 100%. Asian Mormon, there's the 12. This goat of all time, $100 every live stream. Is there a greater man? Christ, indeed. But is there a greater super chatter? Maybe not. I don't think so. I've yet to see him. If there's a greater super chatter, I have yet to meet him. Now, let's just make sure that we don't have anything on Rumble, and then we'll dive back into our conversation regarding insurrection. Very important conversation. Very important conversation. And let's see who we got. Hey, everybody say hello. And Michael Hodgkinson, Theophilus, Bartholomew, Graf, Nathan. You see Michael, High Rise, Brenosh, John, Latter-day Based, Hard right-wing memer, good to see you, gentlemen. Good to see you. Did we say hi to John Douglas? I think so. Let's go. Let's go. Hello. Savs, good to see you there. We needed Qatari Mormon. Why would you say that, huh? Oh, Qatari Mormon? Yeah, for the money. Yeah, that's real. When is Qatari Mormon going to pop up? He would be a political refugee. Like, I don't know if you're allowed to be Mormon in Qatar. I don't think so. You can't proselytize at least. But we'll get him. We'll get a Qatari Mormon. Qatari Mormon, Jewish Mormon. Okay, so back into the show. So we'll jump in basically to the National Guard deployment. By the way, I wanted to pull this up too because this is just like crazy. Because this is just like totally insane. This is what's happening to ICE. While everybody's lying basically about the things that are actually happening, there is some stuff that is happening that is pretty bad. And it concerns, sorry, let me get the water out of the shot here. And it concerns a little bit like the stuff that is happening with like ICE getting their fingers bitten off. Not fun. Not fun, dude. You sign up for ICE, you think it's going to be fine, you think it's going to be great, and they bite your finger off. Worst day of my life. Imagine clocking into your job. Admittedly, they get paid a lot, and this guy's probably going to get some sick benefits. But imagine clocking into your job, and you literally like get your finger bitten off. That must suck. Not gonna lie. That must totally suck. But hold on. What is it to, hold on. Technical difficulties, gentlemen. I'm a bit of a tech boomer. There we go. We'll pull up this article so that you guys can get a look at it. So you guys can get a look at this guy's gross finger. Okay, I won't show you guys the gross finger part. Kid named Finger. ICE agent named Finger. That's got to be a new super chatter name. ICE agent named Finger. Okay, let's go. Here is this article by Fox. Is a quick little video. I wonder if you guys can hear it. Of the if they're going to play ads, yeah. Sorry, Fox Weather. We're not watching.
Winter weather is coming.
We are not watching your propaganda. Anyway, Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin shared a photo on social media Saturday of a federal law enforcement officer's severed finger after an anti-ICE agitator in Minneapolis allegedly bit it off. In Minneapolis, these rioters attacked our law enforcement officer, and one of them bit off our HSI officer's finger. McLaughlin wrote in the post, "He will lose his finger." Well, he actually kind of already lost it. It was literally like detached in a freaking plastic jar. Kind of gross. Anyway, additional details about the assault have not yet been released, though ongoing protests have escalated after the deaths of 2 U.S. citizens during immigration enforcement operations in the Blue City. And there is the law enforcement officer with his finger looking dastardly. I'll slide over a little bit so you guys can get a better look. I know you're eager to get an up close analysis of this gentleman's finger. Hours before McLaughlin's post, a Border Patrol agent was captured on video fatally shooting an armed man in Minneapolis amid a crowd of agitators. The 37-year-old U.S. citizen from Minneapolis allegedly approached agents and then violently resisted while armed with a 9mm pistol and 2 magazines, according to Homeland Security officials. Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino said during a news conference on Saturday it looked like a situation where an individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. I will say for the record, I don't believe that's the case. I do not believe it is the case that Alex Pretty was attempting or desiring, maybe he desired it, but I don't think it was his intent, and I don't think he was going to massacre, do like a mass casualty against the law enforcement officers. I don't think that's the case. I think this is the kind of conjecture that frankly is damaging, that really is not easy to substantiate at all. Like, this is just a claim that you make. And you don't have to make it, and I don't even think it's necessary. I think you can find a way of justifying the use of force because, look, I mean, there's 6 officers there. People don't really know what's going on. One of them shouts gun. You think that the guy pulled the gun on you. This is a typical shout that law enforcement officers will give in order to provide information to a fellow officer. If somebody shouts gun, you think you're going to get shot and you start shooting. So I think there's a very reasonable explanation for the use of force that doesn't actually have to include the idea that Alex Pretty was like trying to like shoot up and massacre law enforcement officers. So anyway, we'll continue going. Officials said a Minnesota anti-ICE protester bit off finger. And is this the gentleman? It doesn't say. This is a very interesting photo. Interesting haircut there. You got the buzz in the back and the bangs in the front. Very interesting. Or maybe that was the guy. Dude, it's really not clear. What a terrible article. About 200 rioters arrived at the scene and began to obstruct and assault law enforcement. Bovino said, "We will not allow violence against our law enforcement officers, and we need state and local help." Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and Minneapolis Police Department Chief Brian O'Hara just a few minutes ago did the opposite of that by omitting the fact the suspect had a gun with magazines full of ammunition. He reiterated that those who obstruct law enforcement are in violation of the law and will be arrested. And supposedly this is another potential suspect. These are the potential suspects who may have bitten off this law enforcement officer's finger. I'm going to keep it a buck with you. I can't think of many situations where a guy could bite your finger off and you have no idea who did it. Guys, I'm so disoriented. Who bit my finger off? Oh, what do you got in your mouth? Just like, imagine that. Like, hey, open your mouth. It spits the top of the guy's finger out. Gotcha. You thought you'd get away with it. It's like, how do you not know? We've got a lineup of suspects. Who do we think it is? All right, sir, you there with the blood trickling from your mouth. Would you mind saying this line, please? And like, I don't know, I'm hungry. They give him some line to say. Like, how do you not know, dude? You bite a guy's finger off. You're not going to be, I mean, maybe you're surprised about it, but I don't think you're going to be at any kind of, I don't think you're going to have any difficulty in figuring out who the guy is. Two potential suspects. I don't know. That makes me almost think it's fake. I was seeing this, like I saw this photo on Twitter, and I'm like, this has got to be fake. The way that the thumb is in the guy's, like it's in a jar. The top of his thumb or whatever finger it was. It looked like a thumb, but it looks no, it's like a ring finger or pinky. And if you see the uncensored photo, it's off. Like he has a nub. So crazy. But yeah, that's what's happening to ICE. Cam Higbee is like assaulted just the other week. Yeah, it's big issues here, big issues. But anyway, we won't bother you guys with too many of those details. Let's dive in to the Insurrection Act of 1807. This has been something that has been called for by pundits on the right, political commentators. This is something that Trump himself has mentioned employing numerous times. It is something that legal scholars believe would change significantly what is happening on the ground in Minnesota, and it is something which I believe is wholly unnecessary. And what's interesting is this article that we actually just read mentions precisely why I believe this is unnecessary, because what we need is simply the law enforcement. We're talking the police. We're talking the beat cops, the average Joe on the police force in the city of Minneapolis. We need them to do their jobs and to arrest people who are obstructing ICE from doing their duty. And this, by the way, I think ends up a lot better. Even if police get into an altercation with an individual and police shoot and kill somebody, I think at this point, because there's such a division between ICE as this arm of the federal government and the locality of Minneapolis, I think if the police do something, it's not going to be seen in the same light as if ICE were to, shoot another guy. And that's the big part of it, right? The big thing here, and this is what JD claimed as well, JD Vance. Good old JD Vance. Good old Bowman, which is his real last name. Why did he change it? Interesting question. But JD Vance has already discussed the real conflict here is that the local police are being told by someone, whether it's the mayor, the governor, some other local official, They are being told by somebody to stand down. I believe it is possible that they've also just washed their hands of it and said, hey, look, this is turning into like an O-Block situation. This is turning into an LA situation where this is unwinnable. We don't want to go in because we're going to get killed. This is like the Black Lives Matter protests all over again, where like in Salt Lake City, the cops literally gave a car to the protesters to destroy. It's like, you know, you've got some evil baby that runs around destroying things. And in order just to like get it to calm the flip down, you give it some toy to break. It's like, okay, please just play with that for a second. Just break it. I don't care. Just take it. Good. We're done. This is, and this, by the way, is a reflection of the fact that the leftist psychology is childish. You think there's any right-wing age regressors? Don't think so. You think there are any, yeah, maybe there are. There's some weird stuff on the online right-wing forums, but you look at the leftist psychology, these are people who in every respect are just juvenile. They didn't get past their 15, 14, 16-year-old rebel phase. The outfits they wear, the dyes that they put in their hair, all of it points us in that same direction. The music they listen to, the way they act politically. It's like they never grew out of this rebel phase. This problem they have with authority, they never grew out of it. Now they just see the government as their parents. And they want to rebel. They don't even care about the cost. They just want to rebel. And the other thing, you know, the use of expletives. You tell one of them, hey, don't say the F word. What are they going to do? They're going to say the F word again. They're going to say, well, why the F not? And if you just take a step back and you think, it's like, you realize that is exactly what an infant would do. That is exactly what a child, a toddler would do. Hey, don't put that in your mouth. It's like this classic case of a parent says don't do something and you do it because you think you're funny, because you're like a stupid baby and you're like, man, I'm not going to do what mom and dad says. That is the actual psychology of these leftists. You tell them to obey laws, they just break them. You tell them to, be responsible individuals, impossibility. They are, and this is, by the way, a red pill. All of your friends, all of the people you knew from middle school, from high school, who were totally immature, who were totally irresponsible, there's not some kind of crazy metaphysical change that occurs when they turn 30. Sure, the brain develops a little bit more, but if you ever have a debate with some of these adults, you realize very quickly they are the exact same people they were when they were 15. Maybe now they know how to pay taxes, but I promise you they are just as insufferable. And their ability to create logic chains and think critically has frankly not developed much. It is a red pill when you realize all the people you went to high school with are going to be basically the exact same way as adults as they were in high school. Once you realize that, you look at adults a very different way. And frankly, you have those conversations with people and they'll say, man, I'm so glad you're getting so active at a young age. I'll be honest, you kind of are a way and you stay that way. Maybe you don't always do the same thing, but your competency as like a human being doesn't change significantly. And if you have anger issues as a kid, you have them as an adult. If you have issues and conflicts with authority in your life, you likely have them as an adult the same way you had them when you were a teen. That doesn't really change. There is no crazy metamorphosis that occurs when you turn 30. If anything, you become more insufferable because you have responsibilities and you're just the same punk rebel kid. So that is a little truth. That is a little truth nuke for all of you guys. Yeah, it can be a black pill too. Brenosh is right in the chat. It can definitely be a black pill. And Michael Hodgkinson, he says, your speech on swearing stuck with me, and I've made an effort to swear less. You're based. You're based. I love you. I love you. Keep doing it, twin. Keep doing it. Every swear word that you stop yourself from saying, that is, I don't know, an angel gains his wings or something. I don't know what a good reward would be. But anyway, let's talk about the Insurrection Act. Let's read the language, because a lot of people don't even know what the Insurrection Act is. This is the Insurrection Act of 1807. In 1807, there's a conflict that occurs between President Thomas Jefferson and Vice President Aaron Burr. Aaron Burr has assassinated Alexander Hamilton. Aaron Burr makes an attempt to basically leave the country to claim land in Mexico and start his own nation. Alexander Hamilton, or not Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson comes up, right, with this ability. He wants a way constitutionally to do something about it. And so the Insurrection Act of 1807 comes about. This is the historical context for the existence. Now let's read a specific thing here. Interesting. Here's a section. Where are we? Hold on. And you can, by the way, there are amendments. There are amendments here too, which change the way that this is applied at a state level. And these are by executive order, and these are amendments to the actual language of the Insurrection Act. But here is the language. And this is from literally the U.S. Code. Now reading this from an article. Concerning interference with state and federal law, the president, by using the militia or the armed forces or both, or by any other means, shall take such measures as he considers necessary to suppress in a state any insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful combination, or conspiracy, if it so hinders the execution of the laws of that state and of the United States within that state, that any part or class of its people is deprived of a right, privilege, immunity, or protection named in the Constitution and secured by law, and the constituted authorities of that state are unable, fail, or refuse to protect that right, privilege, or immunity, or to give that protection, or opposes or obstructs the execution of the laws of the United States, or impedes the course of justice under those laws. What does that sound like? What does that look like? What is, and I'll read it again. I'll read it slow. I'll read it again. So every single person understands the language of the Insurrection Act. You be the judge. You tell me if we have a reasonable situation that would warrant the use of the Insurrection Act. The president, by using the militia or the armed forces or both, or by any other means, and by the way, what does this look like in practice? It means you can dispatch the armed forces. There's in Alaska, there's a U.S. airborne unit, which would likely get dispatched to Minnesota if the Insurrection Act were to actually be enforced or applied. So that's how that would look. Otherwise, because Governor Tim Walz has already said that he would mobilize the National Guard in his state, every state has a National Guard. It's a little interesting, the name National Guard, but it's kind of for the state. Every state has a National Guard. Tim Walz has said that he would use the National Guard. He would mobilize them against federal law enforcement. Well, guess what the Insurrection Act allows? It allows the president to federalize the National Guard, which means what? That Tim Walz is no longer the guy that gets to pass down orders to the National Guard. It is basically given to the President of the United States of America. That is the way this would look, either the military or a federalized National Guard. So anyway, we'll continue. Or by any other means shall take such measures as he considers necessary to suppress in a state any insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful combination, or conspiracy. And breaking down that, what do we have here? Insurrection. I think you got a pretty good argument for it. Second, domestic violence. I think you get a pretty good argument for it, especially as things get worse. Maybe more so with Black Lives Matter, but I think you're very quickly going to find that here too, because there is already a destruction of property. Third, unlawful combination. And the language here is a little difficult to decipher because it's old. An unlawful combination, unlawful, right? A refusal to adhere to the laws of a state, a combination, a plan, an organizing. A combination is used, by the way, in the Book of Mormon frequently, secret combinations. Secret combinations are active attempts basically to combine, to conspire. It's not exactly like what is listed next, conspiracy, but a plan basically to refuse law, unlawful combination, or conspiracy if it so hinders the execution of the laws of that state and of the United States within the state. Important, because what we're talking about is an execution of federal immigration law within the state of Minnesota. Perfectly qualifies under the Insurrection Act. Like, perfectly. That any part or class of its people is deprived of a right, privilege, immunity, or protection named in the Constitution and secured by law. And I would say maybe there's an argument to be made that people are being endangered because the law is not being enforced. There's a lack of justice. There's a lack of domestic tranquility, the preamble to the Constitution. How are we ensuring justice, domestic tranquility? How are we doing that in these states? I think there's a very reasonable argument to be made concerning this part, this clause of our Insurrection Act. And the reason, by the way, and we'll keep reading, it says that any part or class of its people is deprived of a right, privilege, immunity, or protection named in the Constitution and secured by law, and the constituted authorities of that state are unable, fail, or refuse to protect that right, privilege, or immunity, or to give that protection. The reason the language is structured in the way it is because the Insurrection Act actually has been used in the last 100 years, a couple different times. It was used, and not in the last 100 years, before that, by Abraham Lincoln in order to provide a precedent or a reason to begin war officially with the southern states. It was also used by Dwight D. Eisenhower. It was used after the Civil War in order to actually enforce desegregation. It was used by Dwight D. Eisenhower in, Little Rock, Arkansas, in order to, like it says here, take care of these people who have been deprived of a right, privilege, or immunity or protection named in the Constitution, namely these black kids that were being disallowed by the National Guard in the state of Arkansas from entering these public schools. So that's your context. Admittedly, the Insurrection Act has been used in pretty liberal ways, but then you have even the most recent example, which is in 1992 by George Bush Sr., when this is literally used to stop and quell riots in the aftermath of the Rodney King protests and riots. Rodney King is assaulted by police officers. They are acquitted. And California blows up. And the governor says, we literally can't stop this. We do not have the resources to stop this. And he asks the president, Bush Sr., to apply the Insurrection Act and send federal troops. So even in recent memory, there's good precedent for using the National Guard, or rather, using the Insurrection Act to mobilize them, federalize them, and to quell rioting and protest. Totally reasonable. And more importantly, and this is where I think the Insurrection Act language gets so clear. This is the last part. Or if it opposes or obstructs the execution of the laws of the United States or impedes the course of justice under those laws. If I am a lawyer, this is a gold mine. All I need to do is look at Minnesota, and what do you see? Autonomous zones. Autonomous zones, which, by the way, are being defended by Governor Tim Walz. Autonomous zones are illegal. They are zones established, dominated, and governed by residents in an effort to impede the enforcement of laws in that jurisdiction they create. They are not legal. You guys might remember Chaz. I forget where Chaz was. Where was Chaz? Seattle, yeah. You guys remember Chaz in Seattle? They were like starting to plant their own food and whatnot. All of that's totally illegal. And what is it? It opposes, obstructs, and impedes the course of justice and the execution of laws of the United States. I think, by the way, there's a more than reasonable argument to be made that sanctuary cities, which refuse to tell law enforcement about the immigration status of criminals, I think that is also a clear obstruction to the execution of the laws of the United States, or at least opposition to them. Understanding that there are people that are breaking laws, that are committing felonies actively by harboring illegal aliens and then refusing to say a thing about it, opposes the enforcement and execution of the United States laws. Clearly, this is not even a debate. What would be the counterpoint? The only counterpoint you could come up with is, well, but I think that opposing it is okay. Okay, sweetheart, you can think that it's fine. Doesn't change what the Insurrection Act says. Doesn't change the fact that you still are opposing it. There is absolutely every legal justification for the use of the Insurrection Act. Every single one. What else? Jacob Frey telling ICE, get the F out of the city. What do you think that is, other than impeding the course of justice and opposing or obstructing the execution of the laws of the United States? You're literally telling the law enforcement officers to get out. What is that other than impeding and obstructing them from enforcing law? It couldn't be clearer. It literally could not be clearer. The language could not be more plain. What we have is an insurrection in every sense of the word. And I don't even think that we need to apply the Insurrection Act, because all of this, I think, could be mitigated by the police in the state doing something about all of the people impeding and obstructing ICE agents and federal law enforcement. If the Minneapolis and Minnesota police departments would just go and arrest the people who are impeding ICE agents, then ICE could do their job. They wouldn't take all of the heat, and we wouldn't have to apply this Insurrection Act. And the Insurrection Act, for a lot of people, it's a big scary word. I think more than anything, it's an optical issue. Trump says the Insurrection Act, and it's like, ooh, it's this scary idea. I don't know why. I mean, this was used 30 years ago for something very similar. But nonetheless, the optics of it are something that liberals don't like. But now let's look at the stakes. This is what we mentioned at the beginning. If Trump says we won't apply the Insurrection Act, we're just going to hope and pray that the police departments in Minneapolis and Minnesota start doing their jobs, or that whoever is telling them to stand down changes their minds. If we say that, we lose. If we say that, things get worse. They get worse fast. If we allow more time to pass by as leftists from different states drive into Minnesota to protest, to show a united front, if we allow them more time to buy weapons, to arm themselves, to create blockades, autonomous zones, all that time efforts. If Trump, after talking all this game, refuses to apply the Insurrection Act, and I think by mentioning it, the cat's out of the bag. Greatest display of weakness that we have ever seen in recent months, and Jacob Frey accountable for what they are doing in literally opposing or obstructing the execution of the laws of the United States and impeding the course of justice under the laws. If he does not hold them accountable after these subpoenas have already gone out, and I don't even care, by the way, he will have been demonstrating the greatest display of weakness that we have seen. And then you pull back and you reach like some middle ground agreement. I understand that's his trade strategy. I understand that's his negotiation strategy. That doesn't work with these people. That does not work with these people. These people are galvanized because you mentioned the Insurrection Act, and it's because you mentioned it first. What do you think you're going to say? Oh, well, never mind. We're not going to use the Insurrection Act. Do you think they all go home? You think all these protesters go home? They sleep happy in their beds? No. The needle has moved on these social issues. The only way to compete is by holding up our end and saying, when we say things, they mean something. When we say we're going to use the Insurrection Act, when we realize we have every right to do so under the law and refuse to do so, we give them permission. We say, hey, take that, needle, shift it all the way in your direction. This is not a trade negotiation. You can't back off. And while leftists may flip out, everybody should realize that functionally, tangibly, no huge difference will be made. Will it look scary to see actual military on the streets? Yeah, sure, it'll look scary. I hope it scares those activists into staying home. And if it does, far fewer casualties will occur. Both of them. And once more, I'm not saying you can't record people with your phone. You can do that. You just can't get between them and the situation concerning the Insurrection Act. Functionally, what would it do? It would stop the ability for Tim Walz to use the National Guard against ICE. That's good. That would be the best benefit, is that you've basically taken away his power. What would it also do? It would also galvanize the heck out of the left wing. And they are already calling you a fascist. Putting literally military in the streets is not going to do much to help that. But I think we're past that point. Like I said, the cat is out of the bag. Trump has made the comments he has made. If he refuses to actually employ the Insurrection Act, it will be one of the most catastrophic losses we have ever seen. It would be a complete show of cowardice on his part. And yes, John Douglas is right. It would alienate both sides. It would tell the right, we are not committed to winning, and it would tell the left, you've won. Galvanizing both sides. You know, in war, even if you are losing, you never tell that to your people. You never tell that to your troops. Even if you are suffering so many casualties, you present a strong front. You say, we are winning. What do you think they're doing in Ukraine, dude? They're casting it as if they are truly beating the odds, as if they are killing it. They are the strongest out there. Meanwhile, they're being massacred. But the optics of everything matter. And if you tell the left they're winning, what do you think it does? You think they all go home happy? They don't. They don't. They stay outside. And now, the next time something like this happens, and it's about laws that are much more important to enforce, maybe it's about a literal criminal, you're never going to be able to beat them because you've already shown them that their tactics win. So anyway, that is what we have to chat about. That is the Insurrection Act, the Battle of Minneapolis. More to come. There will be more. We have not seen the end of Minneapolis. There will be more. And I do not delight in any of it. I do not delight in any of it. Trump, you know what it is, dude? It's like when your buddy gets into a fight and you know that he wasn't totally justified in it, but you got to back him up anyway. Trump mentioned the Insurrection Act. He didn't have to do that. It escalated the conflict. But he is our president, and we must stand by his side. But we enforce our laws. We must stand by them. He has made the bed. We must lie in it no matter what. You know what it is? It's like Antigone? Is that the one I'm thinking? Antigone is that the one where she has to bury her brother? You guys don't know. The producers don't know. They don't know classic literature. Classic Greek literature. It's out, dude. What have we come to? Nobody knows classic Greek literature anymore. Ancient Greece. Anyway, so yeah. It's like Antigone, right? Where you're forced in the situation of either, look, one side, both sides feel they're equally justified, but you have to enforce the law. You have to be able to say, look, Antigone, I understand you want to bury, I think it is Antigone, right? You want to bury your brother. I understand maybe there's a valid reason for that, but that would undermine my authority as the sovereign, as the leader of the country, and I can't let you do that, sorry. Even if the cause you're undertaking is no, apply the laws, and if I let you do this, you win, and I cannot ever let you win. No ball knowledge from the chat here. Ooh, the Mac's about to go to sleep soon. It's been on for a while. Is there a way to plug it into the battery? The producers. Maybe we run through these super chats quickly. Oh, let's go. The goat of all time's popping up. Goat of all time popping up with the Mac plugin. Let's go. Goat. The show continues. The show continues. Let's get our super chats going. This is the part of the show where you guys can tell me if I've been right, if I've been wrong. You can cuss me out. You can slur me out. You can say all manner of terrible things. 5,000 viewers tonight. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Almost 5,200. Let's throw that link in the chat just so all of you lovely folks have it. powerchat.live/TyClips. Send the show to your cousin, to your mom, to your grandma, to your cat, to your dog, your parakeet. Send it over. Mike Ma is back. Okay, I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. There's some photos from when I was younger where I look exactly like Mike Ma from when he was younger. What it is we have a similar face shape. I think the Remus actually, like we have a similarly structured Germanic Remus. Real? That sounds really weird probably to some people. A Germanic Remus? What is he talking about? Don't want to know about that. Where's the 5,000 viewers coming from? Mostly Twitter. Mostly Twitter. But YouTube, what are we at on YouTube? Let's see here. Oh, I don't have the YouTube chat pulled up. What am I doing, bro? 80 concurrent. 80 concurrent on YouTube. That is good moves, boys. It was up to 200? Hey, 200 concurrent on YouTube? That's kind of gaming. That is kind of gaming, guys. And hey, thank you so much, Mr. Frontiersman, Liberty Frontierman. Thank you so much. Mike Ma, dude, by the way, he produced a great song. I know ball, dude. I know ball when it comes to this stuff. Mike Ma produced a song. He produced a bunch of stuff under the name Sad Villain, and it's really good. And you can find it on YouTube and SoundCloud. ALX, good to see you in the chat, big guy, trooper. Dude, you missed the show. We went off. This was a crazy good show. You're going to have to watch it back. Truly the generational run. Truly. They're calling it the international run. We just finished up filming with French news. Huge. So, yeah. Big moves. Big moves. Big moves, gentlemen. I be all like, merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Kai Clips. Actually. Je m'appelle Kai Clips. Yeah, Mike Ma is a legend, dude. And if you guys haven't checked out that music, I recommend Sad Villain 014, I believe is the one I'm talking about. Let me look this up. Sad Villain 014. I don't even think we'll get copyrighted. There's no way he's got this copyrighted. Freak, dude. It was literally in my YouTube recommended when I logged on initially. But I don't think we'll be able to find it. Got it. Look at me, dude. Literally, as I say, I don't think we'll be able to find it. Found it. That's just another part of the goated run. Okay, listen to this. Mike Ma did this. ALX remembers the Sad Villain days. Yep. This is a remix of, I believe the song is Faces by Neo. I'm not sure about the artist, but yeah. Anyway, that is Mike Ma. Of course, the YouTube video, it features bodybuilding. It's a bunch of clips from Pumping Iron, furry based. So yeah, but very good music. So it's Sad Villain 014. And let's see here. We've got $10 from Wes BWW. Let's flip and go. Thank you, Wes BWW. Sends a $10 super chat on YouTube, says, "You are an American hero." Thanks, man. Making me blush. Making me blush out here. Appreciate you, Wes. Big hearts. I just want to save America. I just want America. I want good people to live. Was this recently? Because I am dying to meet this guy. This is, of all the people I could meet in politics, I think Mike Ma is one of the few that is like, I really, really want to meet this guy. Very cool dude. Very cool dude. So, that's, yeah. Yep, basically. Basically, that's about it. Lexa Cakes, thanks for subscribing on YouTube. Kino's Journey, thank you for the 5. He says, what I was getting at is that we need to run society the way we run other complex high-risk systems that actually work. It means assuming things will go wrong and designing the system such that local failures don't cascade into mass failure. I agree, but I think we've done that in principle. The issue is just that, you know, this human dynamic portion is much more difficult to control for, and you can't control for the human element the same way you can when it's already, put into a specialized field. For instance, right? Like you mentioned, what was it? Like aviation safety or something like that? In aviation safety, you already have people who are wanting to be pilots, who have trained to be pilots. In a society, you don't have that. I think you have a lot more kind of chaotic and confounding variables that you could never even control for. I would push back by saying I think we do try to structure our society that way. But I also agree, you could always make it better. You can always look better, be thinner. But yes, assume things will go wrong, design them so that local failures won't cascade into mass failures. I almost also agree with the opposite, which is that we need to design the system so that a larger scale failure does not affect every single individual at a local level. And I think right now we're maybe too centralized in certain ways. Ted Kaczynski, TED talks about this. TED Talks. Sophia, thank you. Sophia0987. Thank you for the Rumble Super Chat. He says, hey, Kai, what's one misconception about Christ that you see in today's world that tends to lead people away from him? Also, March looked absolutely based, by the way. Thank you, Sophia. I appreciate that. What is a common misconception about Christ that you see in today's world? Man. Okay, interesting. I think a common misconception is probably about his atonement. I think people think that you have to earn his atonement. People believe that Christ's atonement, which was infinite, eternal, for all the suffering of everybody in the world, everybody. I think people think they have to earn that they have to do some number of good deeds or repent to a certain degree to warrant reception of it. And that's just not true. You have to be capable of receiving it. You have to be willing to accept this offering. If somebody gets you a gift, you have to accept it from them. But you don't earn it. You don't earn the atonement. And the atonement's already been wrought. It's already been done. And it's infinite and it's eternal. So no matter what, you're already covered. No matter what you do, Christ has already suffered for it. It does not matter. You literally could not commit a sin that is outside of the scope of what he already suffered. But I think that misconception leads a lot of people into very negative ideas of their relationship with Christ. They feel that they're constantly inadequate. And to some degree, that's true. It's like none of us are deserving of it. But whether we deserve it or not doesn't matter because he already did it. And we should take that and we should run with it. And we should say, hey, I'm so grateful that Christ did this for me. I accept his atonement. I will allow it to change my life. Because when you do that, you do change your life. When you realize what he did for you already and you accept it, you are more inclined to change your life for the better. Because you realize that despite not deserving it, he did it anyway. But I think when people think they have to earn it, when people believe that they're so undeserving of it that they can't even have access to his atonement, which is the only way, by the way, to actually improve, when they feel that way, it leads them away from Christ because it leads them into just this perpetuation of negative self-talk. So that is what I would say. That is what I would say. Anyway, thank you as well, GW0766. Let's flip and go. Thank you so much for the big $20 super chat. That is much appreciated. Thank you. He or she or whoever, they say, first time catching you on here. Good show. Hey, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you. Thanks for being on Rumble. It's the free speech platform. The Rumble stream's been going a lot. I wonder if Rumble reset. Because on Streamlabs, it says we've been live 2 hours. On Rumble, it says an hour and a half. Very interesting. We'll have to assess that afterwards. If it's a problem on Rumble, we'll reset. Don't even worry. Anyway, let's see if there's any more super chats. If not, we'll wrap up here. Thank you guys so much, seriously, for the support on the show tonight. Thank you, Asian Mormon. Thank you, Sophia. Thank you. Who else we have in the YouTube chat here? Wes BWW. Brenosh with a 5. says, Kai, you said earlier in the show that at the time politicians did not think through what the knock-on effects of the Hart-Celler Act would be. Why is that? It seems like it would be pretty logical to conclude what we are witnessing today with the demographics. So you have to understand first, it hadn't been happening for 50 years. The National Origins and Quotas Act restricted immigration to a certain percentage of basically the people in the United States that were of that national origin. So if you had, let's say, 100 Mexicans here, only a certain percent of that 100, let's say 1 or 2, could come in next year. And if there were 100,000 European migrants, or that was their national origin, far more would be able to come in from Europe. So demographically, it was more consistent, and the change wasn't as noticeable. And these politicians did just not conceive of the idea of mass illegal immigration taking place the way that it had. And I think it also, by the way, corresponds with an expansion of the welfare system. There are expansions to the welfare system that happen in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on that incentivize people to come to the United States. The economic development of the United States kicks off in those decades. All of this, I believe, encourages more migration in a way that was never precedented and that they didn't have reason to expect. I don't believe they were just straight up lying. I think they genuinely were shocked at what occurred. And it took like up till the 2000s almost for them to really start reining it in. And the deportations did occur before, but you know, now we're getting back into the conversation of internal deportations. So anyway, yo! Thank you, ALX. Huge super chat from ALX. We love you very much, big guy. ALX says, super chatting since I missed the stream. Appreciate it. Since $33. Appreciate you, my dog. And you've paid the price. You've paid the price of missing the show. And you're already paying a price because you missed it. So I don't want to, I don't want to be too harsh. I don't want to gang up on you too much. But hey, we love you, man. It was so good to see you in Phoenix. Total goat. Did you ever answer if you in 2017? Dang it. This guy's like off the radar. He's probably he's on that island. He's on like North Sentinel Island, I bet. Mike Ma. That guy is probably, I don't know, or he's in the woods, or he's mailing, letter bombs to people. So also plausible. Nonetheless, thank you so much, ALX. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the huge super chat. And let's see if there's any more. I think we're all caught up. I don't want to keep going for too long. I have homework to do tonight. I forgot to do it last week, so let me not forget. In fact, the reminder is going to pop up on my phone in 8 minutes. So thank you guys all so much for being here. We'll read through our super chatters. We had West BWW, Sophia, and GW0766 on Rumble. Brenage, West BWW, I said that already. Kino's Journey, Liberty Frontierman, Asian Mormon, Kino's Journey again, Right Wing Memer, Solar, John, Sir Volkerstein, Latter-day Groiper. We didn't even read that one. We skipped that. Latter-day Groiper with $20 says people need to tremble in fear like North Koreans in the presence of ICE. North Koreans in the presence of ICE? What are they like? Are they particularly afraid of ICE? I think the phrasing there is weird, but yes, they need to tremble in fear like North Koreans when they are in the presence of ICE. Not the North Koreans, but the people. Agree. Well, and I just think you also just have to make people know, hey guys, sorry everybody got this memo that we can be breaking the laws and impeding officers. Sorry, that is actually not the case, actually, guys, and you're all going to jail. You're all going to jail. Sorry. I think that's what we got to do. We just got to send them straight to jail. Straight to jail. You have to hang out there for a week, and you have to pay us $5,000. And I think that would be a pretty good job. And then, dude, some guy sent me a video today, and it's of a detention center. And there's people protesting, and they're like, let us out, let us out. And he's like, dude, this is so terrible. And I'm like, what do you think happens in a holding cell? What, are we going to protest now that the police detain or hold anybody until they get facts straight? What if a bunch of people in a prison start yelling, let us out? You want to say, guys, we've gone too far. We got to let them out of jail. It's just like a total misunderstanding of the way we have to have our laws work. But Latter-day Groiper, thank you so much for the super chat. Asian Mormon, once again, the GOAT of the stream. Thank you so much for the huge super chat. And Solar as well. John 11235. I think we already said them. And yeah, I think that's it. Yep, perfect. All right, everybody, be sure to tune in to Out of Touch next week. We'll be doing a show. We'll be recording on Tuesday, so we'll likely postpone the show till Wednesday. Possibly. We still have to negotiate some things and figure out how we'll do it. But that is plausible. And we'll be then doing the show on Saturday as well. As usual, Schwemmer Saturdays. Please, if you'd like to continue supporting the show, follow on Rumble, subscribe on YouTube, go to the link tree in the bios of either, and what you will find is a link to the Gumroad. The Gumroad is where we have an upload of a ton of content that has been archived that you can't find anywhere else. Fantastic compilations, and you'll get early access to an upload of the speech I gave today at the March for Life in Utah. Otherwise, it'll be up on YouTube within this week. Thank you guys so much for being with me. And let me cue up real quick our outro song. You guys know what it is. You already know. W's in the chat. Yeah, can we get another W in the chat just for everybody? Give yourselves a round of applause type beat. Participation trophies. Everybody gets a participation trophy. Anyway, gentlemen, it has been just truly an absolute honor, a pleasure. And we will see you next time. Unfortunately, for today, we are out of time. Adios.